begin with the 1952 24 Hours of Le Mans. This race was notable as Mercedes ended up taking the win on French soil in the midst of a deep rivalry stemming from World War II occupation of France by Germany. But if we just leave it at that, the whole story hasn't been told. Pierre Levesque, the driver who most of you remember for being involved in the disastrous 24 Hours of Le Mans of 1955, was leading the race early on. As pit stops cycled by, he seemed to not be giving up control of the car. It seemed like he would go the whole 24 hours without having a driver change, and would have been the first ever person to do so. And it looked like he was going to win. But coming into the 24th hour, he was exhausted and therefore missed a gear shift, blowing his engine. So Levesque's race unfolded like this. He took the lead relatively early in the race. Every pit stop that went by, he kept refusing to give over command of the car to his co-drivers, insisting that he would finish the 24 hours alone. By the last half of the race, in the last few hours, he was bleeding lap time due to being completely exhausted. He had stomach cramps in addition to other pains caused by the endurance of the 24-hour race. But by the time he started losing the lap time to the others around him, he was nearly 4 laps ahead of them. He was 3 laps ahead at the time of his missed gear shift. At the end of the race, for the celebration, Le Mans decided not to put on the German anthem in fear of riots. Levesque was called stupid and foolish for his selfish attempt at a 24-hour alone stint. He was blamed for the loss to the Germans. It was their Mercedes 1-2 with the likes of Hermann Lang and Theo Elfrich leading their 2 cars to the 1-2. Alfred Neubauer offered Levesque a ride at Mercedes for Le Mans. He would accept, much to the disapproval of the French. So let's be brutally honest. The Alfa Romeo P2 dominance was going to be hard to overcome for Mercedes anyway. But this terrible disaster was worse than anybody had imagined. The 1924 Italian Grand Prix took place on the famed circuit of Monza in Italy. Obviously. Alfa Romeo came into the race the heavy favorites. For this race, Mercedes brought in Louis Borowski, who was most famous for his Chitty Bang Bang cars, created with Clive Gallup as mechanic. Unfortunately, at Lesmo Corner on lap 45, Borowski went off the track, hitting a tree. He sustained fatal injuries in the crash. His teammate Alfred Neubauer, who would eventually become team principal for Mercedes, as previously covered, was withdrawn from the race along with their other teammate. Alfa Romeo went on to claim a 1-2-3 with Antonio Ascari, the eventual winner. The other podium positions were filled by Louis Wagner and Giuseppe Campari, respectively. The next story occurs at the O'Gorman's Trophy held at Brooklands in 1908. With 3 laps to go in the race, Charles Lane, driving a Mercedes, passed another competitor exiting the members' banking. He got into a slide, crashed into a bridge, and overturned. His car caught fire. Lane survived, but his riding mechanic, Herbert Mark Burke, died after he was thrown all the way across the river from the impact. The engine was thrown 10 feet away from the chassis,